The year was 2347, and humanity had lived under the boot of alien rule for 60 long years. The Galactic Concord Treaty had been forced upon Earth after first contact with the Dominion Coalition, an alliance of 12 ancient species who had controlled the Orion arm of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They looked at humans the way humans once looked at insects. With disgust and cold superiority, Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Meridian. Her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the holographic display flicker with data. The border stations that humanity was forbidden to arm glowed red on the map. She was 53 years old, the gray streaks running through her dark hair and a face that had been hardened by decades of service to a navy that was not allowed to fight. Every day she put on this uniform felt like a small death, a reminder of what humanity had lost. Commander Nathan Price walked up beside her. He was younger, maybe 35, with restless energy in his movements. Men like him were dangerous in times like these. They had never known freedom, only the cage. And caged animals eventually went mad or broke free. "They are testing our northern sensor grid again," Price said. His jaw tight with anger he was not allowed to show. "Third time this week," Cole nodded but said nothing. What was there to say? The coalition species, led by the insectoid Vreth Collective and the massive reptilian Korath Empire, did whatever they pleased. Human warships could only carry small weapons. Human colonies could only exist in 7 approved systems. Human population growth was monitored like livestock being counted for slaughter, far away on Earth. In the Great Assembly Hall of Geneva, Secretary General Daniel Hughes addressed the United Nations. He was 60 years old but looked much older, his shoulders bent under the weight of leading a species in chains. The delegates watched him with tired eyes. They had heard speeches like this before. Nothing ever changed. "We have maintained peace for 60 years, Hughes said, his voice echoing through the silent hall. "But I ask you, what is this peace we speak of? Is it true peace when our children are told they cannot be born because we have reached our population limit? Is it peace when our scientists are forbidden from certain research? Is it peace when our ships are boarded and searched like criminals?" He paused and looked out at the faces before him. Some looked away. Others stared back with the hollow eyes of the defeated. "Peace built on submission is not peace," Hughes continued. "It is delayed extinction. And I fear that delay is running out." Across the galaxy, on the Vreth homeworld of Chitara Prime, High Coordinator Zixathon reviewed intelligence reports in his private chamber. The ancient insectoid had lived for 300 years and had seen many species rise and fall under coalition rule. Humans were supposed to be no different. They were young, emotional, and weak. They should have been completely broken by now, but something in the data troubled him. Human scientific publications have decreased by 40% over the last decade, his advisor reported. Their universities have reduced output significantly. Many of their brightest minds have simply disappeared from public record. Zixathon's compound eyes shifted as he processed this information. Other species, when defeated, became loud in their misery. They complained, they protested, they made noise. Humans had done this too for the first 30 years. But then they had gone quiet. Too quiet. "They are hiding something," Zixathon said, his mandibles clicking together. "Humans do not become silent without purpose. Increase surveillance on all human worlds." "I want to know what they are doing," but the Vreth did not know. What no species in the coalition suspected was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 3 decades. On a frozen moon called Erebus 7, officially listed in coalition records as a small mining colony, Dr. Patricia Vance walked through corridors that existed on no official map. She was 41 years old, a physicist who had supposedly died in a shuttle accident 8 years ago. Her family had mourned her. Her colleagues had given speeches at her memorial. And all that time she had been here, working. Around her moved 3,000 of humanity's greatest minds. Engineers, scientists, weapons designers, all of them officially dead or retired. They had been recruited one by one over the years, carefully selected for both their brilliance and their ability to keep secrets. They lived in these hidden facilities, cut off from everyone they loved. United by a single purpose, Dr. Vance entered the main observation deck and looked out at what they had built. Ships. Hundreds of ships. Hanging in the darkness of underground hangars carved into the moon's frozen core, they were beautiful and terrible, designed not for exploration or defense, but for war. Real war. She activated her secure communication device and connected to Earth through an encrypted channel that bounced through 17 black sites before reaching its destination. The Prometheus array is ready for final calibration, she said to the face that appeared on her screen. General Marcus Webb was 60 years old, a soldier who commanded forces that officially did not exist. His eyes were cold and patient, the eyes of a man who had waited a very long time for this moment. How soon can we begin full production? Webb asked. Maybe less if we push the teams harder. Webb was silent for a moment. Then, for the first time in years, he smiled. 60 years of humiliation, he said quietly. 60 years of bowing and scraping and watching our people treated like animals. They thought they broke us, Patricia. They thought we had accepted our place at the bottom of their precious hierarchy. Dr. Vance nodded, feeling the same cold fire that burned in every human who knew the truth. They only taught us patience, she replied. And patience is the deadliest weapon of all. Back on the Meridian, Admiral Cole retired to her quarters after her shift ended. She sat alone in the darkness, looking at a photograph on her desk. It showed a young woman, smiling and full of life. Her daughter, killed 15 years ago when a Korath patrol ship had destroyed a civilian transport for entering a restricted zone. The transport had been off course due to a navigation error. The Korath had not bothered to check before opening fire. They had not bothered to apologize after Cole picked up the photograph and held it close. Soon, Emily, she whispered to the image, soon they will learn what it means to make humanity suffer, and when that day comes, I will be the one to teach them. She placed the photograph back on her desk and closed her eyes. Across human space, in hidden bases and secret facilities, others like her waited. They had all lost something to coalition cruelty. They had all learned to hide their rage behind masks of submission. But masks could be removed, and rage, when finally released, could burn down worlds. The galaxy slept peacefully that night, confident in its ancient order. It did not know that humanity was waking up. It did not know that the chains were about to break. And when they finally realized the truth, it would be far too late. The countdown had begun, and humanity was ready to remind the universe why they should never have been underestimated. The incident that changed everything happened on a Tuesday, on a small agricultural outpost called Harvest Station in the Kepler 442 system. It was not a military target. It was not a research facility. It was just a place where humans grew food, raised families, and tried to live quiet lives under the shadow of alien rule, colony. Administrator Linda Morrison had built Harvest Station from nothing over 20 years. She was 45 years old, a practical woman with calloused hands and a straightforward way of speaking. She had learned long ago that dealing with coalition inspectors required patience, humility, and a willingness to swallow your pride. She had swallowed so much pride over the years that she sometimes wondered if there was any left. The Korath inspection vessel dominance of purpose arrived without warning on that ordinary morning. This was not unusual. The coalition often sent unannounced inspections to catch humans breaking rules. Linda gathered her senior staff and walked to the landing bay to greet their visitors, her stomach tight with familiar anxiety. Commander Thaxler was the first to step off the ship. He was massive, over 3 meters tall, his scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights. His eyes were cold yellow, reptilian, and cruel. Behind him marched 20 Korath soldiers in full combat armor, their weapons charged and ready. Linda bowed her head in the required gesture of submission. "Welcome to Harvest Station, Commander. How may we assist the Coalition today?" Thaxler looked down at her the way one might look at a particularly unpleasant insect. "You will surrender all records of food production and population distribution. There are reports of unauthorized breeding among your population." Linda kept her voice calm and steady. "Our population is within treaty limits, Commander. We have submitted all required documentation, to the Coalition Census Bureau. I can provide copies if you wish. Your documentation is insufficient, Thaxler replied. He gestured to his soldiers. We will conduct a manual census. All humans in this colony will submit to biometric scanning. Those found to be unauthorized will be removed for processing. The words hung in the air like poison. Everyone knew what processing meant. Sterilization at best. Execution at worst. The scanning began in the central plaza. Families lined up in orderly rows, their faces blank with the practiced emptiness of people who had learned not to show emotion in front of their masters. Children clutched their parents' hands. Elderly colonists shuffled forward on tired legs. One by one, they submitted to the cold touch of Korath's scanning devices. Christopher Lane was 22 years old. He had been born on Harvest Station, had grown up working its fields, and had married his childhood sweetheart Maria just 1 year ago. Maria was now 6 months pregnant with their first child. They had applied for a breeding permit 18 months before and had received approval. All proper and legal. But when the Korath scanner touched Maria, it beeped red. This female is carrying an unauthorized offspring, the Korath soldier announced. She will come with us for processing. Christopher stepped forward, his heart pounding. No, wait. We have a permit. The baby is authorized. I can show you the documents. Thaxler turned his cold eyes on the young man. Your documents are being reviewed. Until verification is complete, the female will be detained. 2 Korath soldiers grabbed Maria's arms. She cried out in fear, her hands moving instinctively to protect her belly. Christopher saw the terror in his wife's eyes, saw the Korath soldiers beginning to drag her away. Something inside him broke. He threw a punch. It was not a smart decision. It was not a tactical decision. It was the decision of a young man watching his pregnant wife being taken by monsters, acting on pure instinct and desperate love. His fist connected with the Korath soldier's face, barely making the alien flinch. What happened next took only seconds, but it would echo through history for centuries. Thaxler drew his sidearm and fired. The plasma bolt struck Christopher in the chest, killing him instantly. He fell to the ground, smoke rising from the wound, his dead eyes staring up at the sky he would never see again. Maria screamed. She pulled free from the soldiers and dropped to her knees beside her husband's body, sobbing his name over and over. Thaxler looked at her with annoyance, raised his weapon again, and fired a second time. Mother and unborn child died together, their bodies crumpling beside the man who had tried to protect them. The crowd surged forward, not attacking, just moving, driven by shock and grief and 60 years of suppressed rage. The Korath soldiers did not wait to see if it was a threat. They opened fire on the civilians. The massacre lasted 11 minutes. 437 humans died in the central plaza of Harvest Station, their blood pooling on the ground where they had once gathered for festivals and celebrations. Men, women, children, the elderly, all cut down without mercy or distinction. Linda Morrison survived only because she had been pushed to the ground and buried under bodies. She lay there, not breathing, not moving, listening to the screams fade into silence and the heavy footsteps of Korath, soldiers walking among the dead. When the news reached Earth, Secretary General Hughes watched the footage alone in his office. Someone had managed to record part of the massacre on a personal device before being killed. The recording showed Christopher's futile punch, Maria's murder, and the beginning of the slaughter before the device went dark. Hughes watched it 3 times. Then he watched it again. His hands trembled. His eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. His cabinet gathered around him, waiting for direction. Foreign Minister Amanda Grant spoke first. We'll have to respond, Daniel. We have to say something. The public is already learning what happened. There will be riots if we stay silent. Hughes nodded slowly. Contact the Coalition Council. Demand an immediate audience. We will seek justice through proper diplomatic channels. But even as he spoke the words, he knew they were empty. There would be no justice. There had never been justice. The Coalition did not recognize human life as valuable enough to protect. The response from High Coordinator Zixathon came within hours. His holographic image appeared in Hugh's office, compound eyes reflecting nothing, mandibles clicking with what might have been impatience. The humans at Harvest Station violated inspection protocols, the Vreth leader stated. The Koreth response was within treaty parameters. Commander Thaxler has been commended for maintaining order. No further action will be taken. This matter is closed. Hughes stared at the hologram. For 60 years, humanity had accepted rulings like this. They had bowed their heads and swallowed their grief and told themselves that survival was more important than dignity. Not anymore. Without saying a word, Hughes reached out and terminated the transmission. Zixithan's image flickered and vanished, cut off mid-sentence. In that moment, the treaty died. Peace died. And something else was born. Within the hour, encrypted orders went out to every hidden facility in human space. Admiral Cole received hers aboard the Meridian. General Webb received his in his underground command center. Dr. Patricia Once received hers on frozen EREBUS-7. The orders contained only 4 words. Operation Awakening is authorized. That night, for the first time in 30 years, the secret shipyards powered up their engines. Weapons that had never been fired were loaded and armed. Soldiers who had trained in shadows put on their armor and said goodbye to loved ones who finally understood why they had been so distant for so long. Humanity was done hiding. Humanity was done submitting. The time for patience was over. The time for revenge had begun. The Coalition expected human outrage after the Harvest Station massacre. They expected angry broadcasts, tearful protests, and diplomatic complaints that they could easily ignore. They were ready for humans to rage and scream and ultimately accept their helplessness. As they always had before, what they got instead was silence. For 3 weeks, humanity said nothing. No official statements came from Earth. No diplomatic communications were sent. Human ambassadors withdrew from Coalition space without explanation. News channels that had always broadcast human content went dark. It was as if an entire species had simply stopped talking. High Coordinator Zixithan paced his chamber on Chitara Prime, his compound eyes scanning intelligence reports that told him nothing useful. His advisors stood around him, equally confused. "What are they doing?" Zixithan demanded. "Why do they not respond? Even animals cry out when wounded." "Perhaps they have finally accepted their place," suggested Koreth, Emperor Vexinar, through a holographic link. He was lounging on his throne, looking bored and satisfied. "My commander taught them a valuable lesson at Harvest Station. They are young and stupid, but they can learn." Zixithan was not convinced. He had studied humans for decades. They were emotional and unpredictable, but they were never silent. Silence meant something. Silence meant planning. "Increase surveillance on all human systems," he ordered. Something is wrong. The first sign of trouble came from a Vreth border station at Nexus Point, a massive military installation that monitored the boundary between Coalition space and the small pocket of systems where humans were allowed to exist. 8,000 Vreth soldiers and technicians lived there. Along with enough weapons to destroy a small planet, the station commander reported an anomaly in subspace at exactly 1400 hours. A massive energy signature was approaching at speeds that should have been impossible. Before he could say anything more, the transmission cut off. Coalition scouts were dispatched immediately. They arrived at Nexus Point expecting to find the station under attack, perhaps damaged, perhaps calling for reinforcements. They found nothing. The station was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. No debris floated in the void. No distress beacons pulsed their warnings. No bodies drifted through space. 8,000 Vreth had simply vanished without a trace. High Coordinator Zixithan received the news in stunned disbelief. "That is impossible. Stations do not simply disappear. Search the entire sector. They must be there." But they were not there. And over the next 72 hours, it happened again, and again, and again. 14 Coalition installations across the border region disappeared in the same way. Military bases, sensor platforms, supply depots, all of them gone without warning, without explanation, without survivors. Over 50,000 coalition personnel vanished into the void. Emperor Vexenar was no longer lounging on his throne. He stood in his war room, surrounded by admirals and generals, his yellow eyes burning with fury. "Enough of this mystery," he snarled. "Mobilize the Third Fleet. 800 warships. We will go to human space and burn them out of existence. Whatever secret weapons they have developed, they cannot stand against the full might of the Korath Empire." The Third Fleet assembled within days. 800 of the most powerful warships the Coalition had ever built. Each vessel was crewed by warriors who had conquered dozens of species. Each carried weapons that had shattered worlds. They moved toward human space in perfect formation, a wall of destruction that nothing should have been able to stop. Admiral Catherine Cole was waiting for them at the border. The Meridian had been transformed. The small treaty-compliant cruiser that Cole had commanded for years was gone, replaced by something that made Coalition ships look like children's toys. Weapons bristled from every surface. Shields hummed with power that sensors could not measure. And the Meridian was not alone. 40-7 human warships hung in space around her, each one a masterpiece of engineering that had been built in secret over 3 decades. They bore names now, names that humans had chosen to honor their dead and frighten their enemies. Vengeance, retribution, fury, reckoning. Cole stood on her bridge, watching the Coalition fleet approach on the main display. Commander Nathan Price stood beside her, his restless energy finally finding its purpose. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Price said. "Weapons charged. Shields at maximum." Cole nodded and opened a channel to the enemy fleet. "Coalition vessels. This is Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Navy. You are entering human sovereign space. You have one opportunity to withdraw. There will be no second warning." Fleet Admiral Thaxler, recently promoted after his actions at Harvest Station, responded with laughter that echoed through the bridge. "One human ship dares threaten 800 Korath warriors? Your species has truly gone mad. I will enjoy watching you burn. I count 47 ships." "Actually," Cole replied calmly, "but I appreciate your confidence. It will make this more satisfying." Thaxler ended the transmission and gave the order to attack. 800 Coalition warships surged forward, their weapons charging, their crews eager for the easy victory they expected. The battle lasted 9 minutes. Human weapons fired projectiles at nearly the speed of light, punching through Coalition shields like paper. Human ships moved with acceleration that should have crushed their crews, dancing between enemy fire with impossible grace. Human shields absorbed energy that should have vaporized them. Glowing bright but holding firm, the Coalition fleet fell apart in minutes. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Escape pods launched in desperate streams, only to be left drifting as human vessels ignored them and moved on to the next target. Admiral Thaxler watched his fleet die around him, his yellow eyes wide with an emotion he had never felt before. Fear. His final transmission was captured by a human recording drone. It showed the proud Korath admiral standing on a burning bridge, surrounded by dying crew members, repeating a single word over and over as a human projectile tore through his ship's hull. "Impossible," he said. "Impossible. Impossible." Then the transmission ended, and the dominance of purpose became one more expanding cloud of debris. When it was over, Admiral Cole surveyed the wreckage in silence. 800 Coalition warships reduced to scattered metal in less than 10 minutes. 47 human ships still standing, not one of them destroyed, only a few showing minor damage. "Send a message to Earth," Cole ordered. "Tell them the Third Fleet is gone. And tell them we are just getting started." On Earth, Secretary General Hughes prepared to address the galaxy. Every communication channel was hijacked for his broadcast. Every species in the Coalition heard his voice and saw his face. "For 60 years you told us we were lesser," Hughes said. "You confined us, controlled us, killed us when it suited you. You believed you had tamed humanity. You believed we had accepted our chains." He paused. And when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. "You were wrong. The treaty is dissolved. Any Coalition vessel that enters human space will be destroyed without warning, Any coalition world that threatens human colonies will burn. This is not a negotiation. This is not a discussion. This is a notification. Hughes leaned forward, his eyes burning with 60 years of suppressed rage. You wanted to know what we were doing during those quiet years? Now you know. We were building the instruments of your destruction, and we were waiting for you to give us a reason to use them. You gave us that reason at Harvest Station. Now face the consequences. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as primitive monkeys, as animals to be controlled, as nothing more than a minor nuisance, watched in stunned silence. The balance of power had shifted in a single day, and nothing would ever be the same again. The destruction of the Korath Third Fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For 10,000 years, the Coalition had ruled unchallenged. Younger species learned their place or were destroyed. There was no third option. That was the natural order of things. Humanity had just torn that natural order to pieces. High Coordinator Zixathon called an emergency summit of all 12 Coalition species on the fortress world of Bastion Prime. This was the most heavily defended planet in Coalition space, surrounded by weapons platforms, protected by energy shields that could stop asteroids, and garrisoned by soldiers from every member species. If anywhere was safe from human aggression, it was here. Leaders and admirals gathered in the Great War Chamber, their faces showing various degrees of fear, anger, and disbelief. Emperor Vexinar had lost his arrogant confidence. The death of Thaxler and the Third Fleet had shaken him deeply. We underestimated them, Zixathon admitted, the words bitter on his tongue. But numbers do not lie. The humans have perhaps a few hundred ships at most. We have thousands. We will gather every fleet from every member species and crush them through overwhelming force. The combined armada assembled over the following weeks. 15,000 warships from 12 species, the largest military force in galactic history. Vreth carriers launched clouds of fighter craft. Korath battleships powered up their massive guns. Ships from the Threll Dominion, the Saxon Republic, the Vorn Collective, and 8 other species took their positions. It was a display of power meant to show humanity the futility of resistance. Admiral Catherine Cole watched the enemy fleet gather from the bridge of her flagship, now renamed the Retribution. General Marcus Webb stood beside her, along with Dr. Patricia Vance, who had left her laboratory to witness the moment her creations would be tested against the full might of the Coalition. 15,000 ships, Commander Price reported. They have formed a defensive sphere around Bastion Prime. They want us to come to them. Cole studied the tactical display. The Coalition strategy was sound. By forcing humanity to attack a fortified position, they would negate some of the human advantages in speed and maneuverability. It was the smart play for a force that had numbers on its side, and we will not disappoint them, Cole said. Dr. Vance, are the hammers ready? Vance checked her datapad. All 24 platforms are in position. Targeting solutions are locked. They never detected the deployment. The hammers were humanity's answer to numerical disadvantage. 24 satellite platforms that had been secretly positioned around the Bastion system over the past week, each one carrying a simple but devastating weapon. Tungsten rods, each the size of a small building. Accelerated to 99% of light speed by magnetic rails powered by miniature fusion reactors at those speeds. The rods were invisible to sensors. They would hit their targets before light from their launch even reached Coalition detectors. It was a weapon so simple that the Coalition had never thought to look for it. Fire, Cole ordered. 20-4 platforms released their payloads simultaneously. The rods crossed the vast distance to the Coalition fleet in seconds, each one carrying more kinetic energy than a nuclear bomb. The first impacts tore through the heart of the enemy formation. Ships did not explode so much as disintegrate, their hulls vaporized by the sheer force of collision. Chain reactions rippled through the tightly packed fleet as debris from destroyed vessels slammed into neighboring ships. 3,000 Coalition warships died in the first second of battle. Then, the human fleet engaged. 342 human vessels charged into the chaos. their weapons firing in continuous streams. Energy beams sliced through weakened shields. Missiles found gaps in damaged armor. Human pilots flew with precision born from simulations run millions of times. Their moves practiced until they were perfect. The battle raged for 6 hours. Coalition forces fought back with desperate courage, knowing that surrender meant admitting defeat to a species they had always considered inferior. But courage was not enough. Skill was not enough. Numbers were no longer enough. Human ships danced through enemy fire, taking hits that should have destroyed them but somehow surviving. When one human vessel finally fell, its crew fighting until the last second. 10 coalition ships died in revenge. General Webb commanded the ground assault. Human marines, enhanced by technology the coalition did not know existed, dropped onto Bastion Prime's surface and began systematically destroying military installations. They moved like ghosts, appearing from nowhere, striking without warning, vanishing before counterattacks could be organized by the end of the 6th hour. The coalition defensive fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing in all directions. Bastion Prime's orbital defenses were slag. Its military bases were smoking craters. The most heavily fortified world in the galaxy lay exposed and helpless. Admiral Cole broadcast to the planet's surface. "Your fleet is gone. Your defenses are gone. Surrender now, and your civilian population will be spared. Resist, and this world will serve as a lesson to the rest of the galaxy." High Coordinator Zixithan's response came from a bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. His voice was shaking, but his words were defiant. "The Coalition will never surrender to humans. We would rather die than submit to an inferior species. You have won nothing. Other fleets will come. Other armies will rise. We will fight you until the end of time." Cole was silent for a moment. Then she turned to her tactical officer. "Begin bombardment of military targets. Precision strikes only. Leave civilian areas intact." The bombardment lasted 3 days. Human weapons fell from orbit with surgical precision, targeting bases, factories, government, buildings, and communication centers, while carefully avoiding schools, hospitals, and residential districts. When it was over, Bastion Prime's ability to wage war had been completely destroyed. But its population remained largely unharmed. Zixithan emerged from his bunker to find his world transformed. The proud fortress planet was now just another conquered territory. Its military might reduced to rubble, its population looking up at human ships with fear and awe. Across Coalition space, the message was clear. Humanity had not come to negotiate. Humanity had not come to compromise. Humanity had come to win. Secretary General Hughes met with his military commanders on Earth to plan the next phase. Foreign Minister Amanda Grant reported on the political situation. "The Vreth are seeking separate peace negotiations," she said. "The Korath are refusing all contact, but their remaining fleets have pulled back to defensive positions. The other coalition members are fracturing. They're arguing about who is to blame for underestimating humanity." Hughes nodded slowly. "And what do our people say? What is the mood among human civilians?" General Webb pulled up reports from across human space. Celebrations were happening on every world. Fireworks lit up skies. Strangers embraced in streets. 60 years of fear and humiliation were being released in an explosion of joy. But there was something else too, something darker. "They want blood," Webb said simply. "Not just victory. Revenge. There are calls to burn Korath worlds, to enslave Vreth populations, to make the Coalition suffer as we suffered." Hughes stared out the window at the night sky, thinking of all the dead, all the years of pain, all the reasons humanity had to hate. He understood the rage. He felt it himself. "Then we must be careful," he said finally. "We must not let our anger make us into the monsters they believed us to be. We fought to be free, not to become tyrants ourselves. That must remain true no matter how much we have suffered. It was easy to say, it would be much harder to do." But Hughes knew that the true test of humanity was not whether they could win the war. The true test was what they would do with victory when it came. The galaxy watched and waited, wondering what kind of conquerors humans would prove to be. The war lasted 18 months. could have lasted 18 days if humanity had chosen the path of complete destruction. Human weapons were capable of shattering worlds, of exterminating entire species, of erasing 10,000 years of coalition civilization from the galaxy. The temptation to do exactly that was strong. But Secretary General Daniel Hughes made a decision that would define humanity for generations to come. "We will not commit genocide," he declared to his war council in the early months of the conflict. "We will not enslave, will not become the monsters they believed us to be. We have every right to hate them. We have every reason to want them destroyed. But rights and reasons are not the same as wisdom. We must be better than they were, or everything we suffered will have been for nothing." Not everyone agreed. Admiral Cole argued for harsher measures. General Webb wanted to make examples of worlds that resisted. Across human space, civilians who had lost loved ones to coalition cruelty demanded blood, but Hughes held firm. And gradually, others came to see the wisdom in his approach. The Vreth Collective was the first to formally surrender. High Coordinator Zixathon, who had ruled his species for 3 centuries, came aboard the human flagship Redemption to sign the new treaty. He was old now, his carapace showing cracks, his compound eyes dim with defeat. Admiral Cole stood witness to the signing, her face betraying no emotion. She thought of her daughter Emily, killed by Korath weapons 15 years ago. She thought of all the humans who had died under coalition rule, their lives cut short by alien arrogance. She could have killed Zixathon where he stood. Part of her wanted to, but she did not move. "For 10,000 years, the Vreth have ruled," Zixathon said as he pressed his appendage to the document. "Now we will learn to serve." "Not serve," Hughes corrected, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Coexist. As equals, if you can manage it. As subordinates, if you cannot. But not as slaves. Humanity does not keep slaves. Korath were more difficult." Emperor Vexenar refused to surrender personally, retreating to his palace on the Korath homeworld and ordering his remaining forces to fight to the death. Human marines stormed the palace in a bloody battle that lasted 3 days. When they finally reached the throne room, they found Vexenar dead by his own hand. Body slumped on the throne where he had once lounged in arrogance, a ceremonial blade buried in his chest. His final message, recorded moments before his death, was broadcast across Korath space. "I die rather than kneel to humans," he said. "Let history remember that the Korath never surrendered." History would remember. But history would also remember what came next. Vexenar's successor was a younger Korath named Shalvex, military commander, who had been forced to watch his fleet destroyed at Bastion Prime. He was pragmatic where his predecessor had been proud. Standing where Vexenar had been blind. "Your species has proven its strength," Shalvex admitted at the formal surrender ceremony. "We respect strength. We'll honor this peace." General Webb, who had led the assault on the Korath homeworld, stepped forward. His face was hard, his eyes cold with memories of friends lost in the fighting. "See that you do," he said. "We have long memories. We do not forgive easily." One by one, the other coalition species fell into line. Some surrendered willingly, recognizing that the old order was gone and eager to find a place in the new one. Others required more convincing, their worlds stripped of military capability before they would accept defeat. But through it all, Hughes held to his principles. No species was exterminated. No world was rendered uninhabitable. Civilians were protected, cultural sites preserved, prisoners treated humanely. It was harder than simple destruction. It was slower than genocide. But it was right. Dr. Patricia Vance watched the final treaty signing from her laboratory on Erebus 7, which was now officially recognized as the birthplace of humanity's military renaissance. The scientists who had worked in secret for 3 decades finally walked in sunlight, their sacrifices acknowledged, their work celebrated. Her assistant, Gregory Hall, brought her a glass of champagne as celebrations erupted across the facility. "Was it worth it?" he asked. "All those years hiding, pretending to be dead, cut off from everyone you loved?" Vance thought about the question carefully. She thought of colleagues who had died before seeing their work completed. She thought of her parents, who had buried an empty coffin and mourned a daughter who was still alive. She thought of the children she had never had, the life she had never lived. Ask me in 100 years, she finally said. Ask humanity's children when they look up at stars that finally belong to them, on Harvest Station, rebuilt and thriving. A memorial stood in the central plaza where the massacre had occurred. 437 names were carved into black stone, with Christopher and Maria Lane at the top. Every year, on the anniversary of their deaths, Admiral Cole returned to lay flowers. I keep my promises, she would say to the memorial. We all do now. Secretary General Hughes retired after the war, his health broken by years of stress and difficult decisions. He spent his final years writing, trying to explain to future generations why humanity had chosen mercy over pure vengeance. We could have burned the galaxy, he wrote in his final memoir. We had the power, and God knows we had the justification. But power without restraint is tyranny, and we did not suffer under tyrants only to become them. Our revenge was not in their deaths, but in their survival. Let them live to see humanity flourish. Let them remember every day that they once tried to cage us. Let that memory be our monument, more lasting than any destruction we could have caused. 20 years after the war's end, humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Human population had tripled, spreading across worlds that had once been forbidden. Human ships explored regions of space the Coalition had never dared to enter. Human scientists made discoveries that advanced technology by centuries. Human culture, once suppressed and controlled, spread across 1,000 worlds. On the anniversary of the Peace Treaty, now called Liberation Day, throughout human space, Admiral Catherine Cole gave her final public address before retiring from service. She stood before a crowd of millions, human and alien alike, her gray hair gleaming in the sunlight, her uniform decorated with medals from 100 battles. They called us young, she began. They called us primitive, called us inferior. They said we did not deserve a place among the stars. They said we should accept our chains and be grateful for whatever scraps they threw us. She paused, letting the silence stretch. They were right about one thing. We were young. Young and angry and desperate and afraid. But like all young things, we grew. We grew strong in secret. We grew patient in public. And when they pushed too far, when they killed our children and laughed at our grief, we grew angry enough to tear down everything they had built. She straightened her shoulders, and even at 70 years old, she looked like someone who could conquer worlds. Let this be the lesson history remembers. You can contain humanity for a time. You can restrain us, belittle us, even kill us. But you cannot break us, because humans do not surrender. Humans do not forget. And when the treaty breaks, and